Something is awakening inside of Black women, a quiet but undeniable knowing that we're meant for more than survival, more than sacrifice, more than endurance, more than carrying everyone else's expectations while putting our own dreams on hold. A realization that the life we've been taught to accept may not be the life we're meant to live, and that there may be more freedom, more peace, more joy, and more possibility available to us than we've ever imagined. Because once you realize you have options, everything changes.
I want a life unrecognizable.
Close your eyes and imagine living a life you love, unapologetic and unbothered, free from daily microaggressions from Karens and Kens, free from the fear of police brutality and systemic racism. Wouldn't that feel amazing? Now open your eyes. What if I told you that it's possible? Hear inspiring stories and get the actual blueprints from brothers and sisters of the diaspora who are living out their wildest dreams abroad. You've heard the term, now be inspired by the movement. I'm Krishan Wright, and this is Blaxit Global. We are back, and I am so excited and delighted for this season of the Blaxit Global Podcast, as well as this conversation, because I get to have what I know will be a lovely chat with two of the homies. So we have Andrea and Jean Hayden, who are in Coimbra, Portugal, by way of Texas. So welcome to the podcast, y'all.
Thank you for having us.
We will start with Eugene. So what's your origin story?
I am originally from Houston, Texas. Majority of my family is from Houston. My mom is from Houston. My dad is from a little town called Baytown, more specifically McNair Station. We moved to Baytown when I was about 11 or 12, and that's where I finished high school. And then from there, I went to the Naval Academy Prep School first. It really wasn't one of those things that worked out for me. But after that, I came home for a quick year, and then I had to leave because I didn't like being home. Played a little bit of football at the University of Houston. And then I went to the Air Force Academy, and that's where I started my own journey. From the Air Force Academy, my commissioning in the Air Force, went to upstate New York, Korea, and then San Antonio. And then that's where I met Andrea, and that's where our journey started.
Thank you for your service, your military service. So, Miss Andrea, what's your backstory?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And so my mother's from New York and my father's from Texas. I ended up in Texas around 9 years old. My mother died when I was just 13 months old. We stayed in New York until I was about 9. And then my father transitioned us to San Antonio, Texas, where all of his siblings and cousins and nieces and nephews and everybody were. And that's pretty much where I spent the rest of my life, was in San Antonio. Went to high school there. And in high school, I started cosmetology while I was in high school. It was a passion that I had. And my sister, my only sister, she's 2.5 years older. She had started cosmetology. So I followed right behind her footsteps, even though she didn't continue like I did. That cosmetology experience was kind of life-changing for me. Went straight from high school into a career of cosmetology and have been in that field for 40 years, on into entrepreneurship. Somewhere in there, I met this man.
Ooh, the stars aligned and the two planets collided and poof. The solar system was never the same. Okay. All right. That's good.
My story doesn't sound like that, but that's probably the story other people would tell you, but 30 years together almost.
And now this love story that started in the U.S. is now in Portugal.
For us, we wanted to live overseas for, you can say, decades. We were travelers, dating and in our marriage, and everywhere we went, we saw an opportunity. We saw the world differently. And so we would always go favorite phrase, we could live here. You say that everywhere. Italy became one of my favorites. I really thought we were going to live in Italy one day. We never put a date to anything. We never said, hey, we're going to look to go here, this time, this place, whatever. What generally happens is you go on vacation. We would take long vacations. You're enjoying life, enjoying the time, enjoying the scenery, enjoying the food. And then you get back home and life hits you in the face again. You go back to work. Andrea went back to her business. And so then you forget about that. Wow, I could live here until the next trip. And that's how it happened. The biggest catalyst for us, I would say two. One was our first visit here to Portugal because it was a very personal visit. My uncle, my dad's only brother, left the U.S. when he was 18 years old. Went to Mexico, migrated through Central America, got his education in Argentina, where he got his college degree, moved to Brazil. From Brazil, he ended up in Portugal somewhere around 45 years ago. He met Maria Isabel, and that's my aunt. They got married. They have one daughter, and she has 3 children. And so when we came to Portugal, we're not thinking about moving. We're just coming to see family because I hadn't seen my uncle since I was about 11 years old. When we came to visit, we literally would come to see the family. They were in Oreias, and so they started taking us around. Lisbon, Oreias, Cascais, Sintra, and we're just in awe of everything that we see. I mean, in total awe. We're going, okay, Portugal is amazing. No one ever talked about Portugal. During the visit, one interesting thing happened. We were at a little store in Cascais. She's looking at hats. And I'm, of course, I got the camera out. I'm videoing and doing all kind of things. And she just looks at the camera and says, I could live here. I just out of the blue, she just said it. I found that video roughly 6 months before we moved here and showed it to her and said, you said this in Cascais. I forgot all about it. I had never used the video, never even thought about it again. We were planning on coming the next year back to Portugal to see the family and then look around more and just to see more of the country. But 6 months after we got back, the pandemic hit. 6 months into the pandemic, my uncle caught COVID in the hospital. Nurse brought COVID into the hospital. There was a breakout. He didn't survive. So literally, as soon as I got my uncle back in my life again, I lost him again. That was hard on me. That's one of my biggest regrets that we didn't make it here sooner. If we had come 10, 15 years sooner, we may have already been living here. We always wanted to live overseas. Always.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the trip to Portugal, like Jean said, it was amazing, but it was like literally life-changing. Just to kind of piggyback off of where he was in the conversation, ever since he was young, a lot of people in the family would say, you just like your uncle. You just like your uncle. And he never knew what that meant because he didn't have a lot of years with his uncle. Like he said, he left at 18, moved to Mexico City, and he told us he went to Mexico because he barely had any money. You got to think about the year that was, the times. He had nothing, and he still did it. And so he landed in Mexico City because he said the little money he had would go further in Mexico. And then he just continued to build on to that. And so when it was time, why God dropped that in my spirit out of nowhere about coming to Portugal, I had never met him. I had never talked to him. We would get his postcards. He was real funny because he would always sign his cards and put what messages in different languages. He always said Americans are lazy. They need to learn languages. You're going to figure out what I wrote you because you're going to have to go and figure it out. Okay? He was like that, though. He was hilarious. A lot of people in the family didn't travel internationally. We did. So we were going to be the ones to go see him. But during the time that we were there, I told Uncle Lester, everybody has told Jean that he's more like you than his dad, than your brother. And he was just like, what? Me? Really? Probably it took about 3 days. And he pulled me to the side and he just was like, I see, we are a lot alike, It was a transformational visit. It was not just a great visit. Like we both left Portugal changed. We'll talk more about that later. But as far as my journey, coming out of high school, going straight into the hair business, The hair business to me it was a blessing. Like, it was a passion that was in me from start. Like, I've never had a job. At 25, me and one of my coworkers decided to open our own business, which was scary as hell because coming from my background, I had no backup. My mother died when I was 13 months old. Her mother took custody of me and my sister from the age of 13 months to the age of 8, and then she passed away. Then my dad, had us there in New York, and we really kind of was just passed around for like a year. This aunt, this girlfriend, whatever. We didn't even know we were coming to Texas. We knew we had heard we had family, but like we was young, that didn't really mean anything. All we knew was my mother's side of the family. My mother was the only child. Getting to Texas, we were kind of placed with an aunt and uncle to raise us for like 3 years. And so that was all during my junior high school years. And so by the time I got in high school, my father finally relocated to San Antonio permanently and remarried. But I was already like in the 10th grade by then. I was younger than that because I was skipped twice. I was skipped from the 2nd to the 4th grade. So I was like 12 in the 9th grade. Going into cosmetology, not only was it a passion, but I think it was kind of like a saving grace for me. I mean, I just had the gift early. I took off really fast. When me and my business partner got together at 25, we had already worked together for some years. And we opened our first salon, and like within 6 months, we had 15 people working for us. And that grew. By the time I met Jean, we had about 40 employees, I would say, and had a really huge business. I've enjoyed a lot of success, but it was hard. And it was very scary because I literally had no backup, no financial backup, no real family backup. And so when I think about that, even I had to use those hard times and that memory muscle when it was time for us to make this move to Portugal. We talked about Portugal, fears and things come up, and then I had to be able to pull on that memory muscle to say, I can do hard things. I've done hard things most of my life. Everything about my life has never been easy. And so I know I'm kind of, all over the place with the story, but it just makes me think about the journey that I had and all of the resilience that I had to pull on to accomplish the success that I had and dealing with it and doing all the hard things with the medical challenges that I have. Because when I talk to people about my story, I can't ever leave that out. Because I've lived for 40 years, I was in the beauty business, but for the entire 40 years, I was diagnosed with lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and Graves' disease the entire time. So I graduated high school, and 3 months after high school, I was diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid at the same time. So it almost like a traveling journey together with my career and my history with the autoimmune chronic illnesses that I've dealt with.
We'll be right back.
Building a life overseas is about more than just choosing a country. It's about choosing yourself. That's why I created our newest guide, 7 Questions Every Black Woman Should Ask Herself Before Building a Life Overseas. Get your free copy through the link in this episode or visit blaxitglobal.com. What a beautiful story and journey for both of you. And thank you for sharing it and being so transparent, because I'm hearing resilience as a common thread, divine timing and divine intervention. Oh my gosh, I get chills when I hear the story and how you had that, divine download. I was like, oh, we have to go to Portugal, and like all of the things that started to show up in your lives that signaled that this was the time, this was the place, like not the earlier places that you had embarked on in your journey together, built a career while managing some serious health challenges. What were the things that ultimately led you to Coimbra specifically? And were there any trepidations because of the things that you mentioned before?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of them. As we traveled, and we always traveled internationally because we worked so hard. So when it was time to go on vacation, we wanted big vacations, you know. So we've been lots of places from Hong Kong to Greece to just lots of really great vacations. And we don't have children. So that was our way of you work hard, you play hard, right? But the one thing that we think back to now that really didn't make sense to us then was every time we went on a trip, I felt so much better. Throughout my career, I've had my fair share of knockdowns. I've had my fair shares of hospital stays. And the only thing that I think that kept me going is the extreme passion that I had for my business and what I did in my business. And so all of those years, we never connected the dots that how much better I felt in these different countries. We would always contribute to being on vacation, you know, the endorphins of being happy to see all this wonderful things and resting and all of the things. It wasn't until we moved to Portugal and was here for 6 months before going back to the States to visit because my only niece was having a baby that I realized it was environmental, it was food, it was the chemicals, it was all of the things that we experience in the States, especially through the food sources, that was contributing to my declining health. When I would go back to the States to visit, we started to connect the dots that all those many years as we was traveling, we never understood that it's getting outside of the US, the food quality and sources are more natural without additives and it's not a processed food culture. Everything is fresh, blah, blah, blah. As we traveled, we always knew we wanted to live abroad, but I always was tethered back at home because I had a business. Sometimes a brick and mortar business, as much as it's a blessing and it provided an amazing life for me, it is still a ball and chain. And so every time we came back, as much as we dreamed during that 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever time we were gone, reality set in as soon as we landed. So, you know, we would just forget about it and we would just chug away until the next time we was going on a trip. Dubai, it was an organization there that I've been introduced to them through an organization that I was the director in the United States for that offered education in trichology. And trichology is a specialty in hair loss and scalp disorders. If a woman is losing her hair or whatever, you would see a trichologist. You would see a dermatologist, but it would be a trichologist managing your situation because doctors are not going to manage you in that way through treatments and things of that nature. Well, I had been contacted by this organization in Dubai because they desperately needed a female trichologist. Really, at that point, 10 years ago, there were no female trichologists, not only in Dubai, but in all of the surrounding EU areas. There were no female trichologists, and hence the urgency. Because when a woman comes in, you know, we're talking about a culture that hair is sexual to that culture. And so if a woman comes in, she is not really supposed to unwrap her hair in a closed room with another man. And the only trichologists that were available were men. That is where the urgency was, recruiting a trichologist. And believe me, we were interested. It was just the timing that was wrong. You know, we're talking about I need to offload a business, offload my house, you know, just all of the things. And the urgency is what created the fear. It was just too much too fast. But I think that was the first major pause that we took to really explore the fact that outside of that urgency, we weren't really ready to kind of figure it out, you know, so that maybe we could take advantage of the situation. Now, I went and I toured the facility and everything. We did the whole 9 yards. So we knew what we were getting into. It was just the timing. When we look back at it now, that was the first serious look at our lives and take that pause and say, we can cash all this in and we can go, kind of thing. But we really didn't read into it at that point. But subconsciously, we had already made that shift. We just didn't realize it to that degree because after that opportunity closed, we went on back to our lives. And so probably 5 years after that is when we came to Portugal to visit Uncle Lester and the family. I had to sit down with my medical team. And they told me at that point, because I've had doctors like my rheumatologist and my specialist for years and years. I had built a dream team of doctors in my medical team to take care of me over the years. And so they sat me down and they told me, they were point blank, if you don't need to work, you need to bunker down in the house and not come out. You cannot survive whatever this is. You've already had too many hits to your body. Basically living with what I have for so long and the different things that I've mentioned, I've had some big hits, over the years, and I've come back. But they basically said, we don't know what this is. And until they have some type of solution, you need to stay bunkered in the house. I've never been the type of person that didn't listen. Thank God. That is probably the only reason I have the wherewithal that I have in me now is because I have worked with my medical team and I have partnered with them and I've listened and I've done my own research. But I came home and I told Jean, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I just told you I'm in the beauty field. People are in my face all day, every day. And I've been sick behind it over the years, I mean, I was constantly having colds and flus and I've had pneumonias and things, because of the contact with people. But it didn't get as clear as it did until COVID came. And we lost Uncle Lester, but we lost more than that. I lost first cousins to COVID. I lost colleagues to COVID. We lost friends to COVID. I mean, there are people who said, oh, I don't know anybody that died of COVID. That's not our story. I went home and was fearing for my life, literally. Lived in complete fear and anxiety. I mean, Jean literally used to get mad at me because I'm home and I'm watching all this stuff unfold on TV and we're losing people. But soon as they sent me home, Jean basically told his job, look, I got to come out of here quickly because I cannot afford to bring anything home, to my wife. So his job was very supportive and he came home. And literally, no one knew COVID was going to unfold to this big situation, right? So we thought, oh, this is going to be good. We could be home together for a couple of weeks. We had our 2 fur babies and, soon that passed and it went from 2 weeks to a month to 2 months. We're bunkered in. Jean wouldn't even let me literally leave the house. Like I couldn't go to the grocery store. He was not playing. Probably 2 months in is when I had to get real serious about, I got a business. This COVID thing done blew up, okay? It's killing people worldwide. It's millions of people dying. Like, we all know the story. But I'm watching it from a whole different lens. And Jean is like, I don't know what you're thinking about, but what I know is I'm not losing my wife behind COVID. And so I had some serious decisions to make. Emotionally, I had to unpack it. I knew that I wasn't taking that kind of chance. I'm going to retire because this don't look like it's going to end anytime soon. And as we saw, I didn't for a really long time. I literally sheltered in place for 2 years. Literally. I mean, we had family members upset with us because people was chomping at the bits to come out in 3 months, 4 months, People was getting mad at us and my family because I lost cousins and they mad that I'm not coming to the funeral. So it was a lot of things that was going on that we had to isolate ourselves and say, okay, we can't play with nobody because nobody is really getting it. Okay. And that really kind of brought us even closer together. We've always been close, but that really was just like, we got to shut it down and we got to come up with a plan. I decided to retire. Thank God I was able to sell my business, but at that point, I didn't care if I could or not, because my life is on the line. My business, what I did every day, I really should have retired 5 years before this happened. I had already felt my body needing to slow down. COVID ended up being a blessing and a curse. It was going to take something drastic for me to stop and to slow down. But in that slowdown and in that time in that house together, bunkered down, and we had nothing but time to talk. It was some of the best time of our lives, actually, because we got a chance to really talk about all of what we wanted. Even after Uncle Lester passed, it still didn't right away say, oh my God, let's move to Portugal. But it was within that. It was within watching him pass, knowing my cousins and friends and colleagues, and watching these people innocently lose their life, all their dreams, all their hopes. All them people had plans with their kids. They had vacation plans. They had plans to go to work with their colleagues the next week. All those things, all those dreams. We watched all these people just get taken away for no reason of their own. And that, to me, I think probably pushed us into taking ownership of our dreams and realities and then putting a plan together and putting some wheels on that plan. The reality came that we don't have anything holding us here. This didn't happen until the end of 2020 going into 2021. It's like a freedom we ain't never had, because as long as you have a business, it's like a child. And so I told him one day, I said, look, you work, I'll do the research. And in that research, I found Stephanie and Rashida. I found other communities talking this talk, because we didn't really know anybody else talking this talk. Okay. We knew of Uncle Lester, but his move was totally different. We're talking 40 something years ago. Like he couldn't, even if he was still alive, he wouldn't have been able to help us with our process. Once you get into the headspace, the universe starts to line things up. Those were no accidents. Once we opened up our minds and hearts to the possibility, then things started to show up. I mean, I started digging like I was looking for a bone, okay? And so the biggest thing I think that shocked people about us moving, the first thing that come out of people's mouth is, you gonna leave your doctors? You gonna leave your healthcare? I'm not quiet about the things that I've been through because I think it can help people. That was something I was willing to do, but not recklessly. I needed to do a lot of research about the healthcare, the environment, and things. I could love Portugal all day long, but I'm not going to do it and not be safe and make some strategic decisions about this move abroad. So I started that deep dive and got in community, a lot of private groups. I met Bridget Jones and, all of these people in this conversation. You just start talking the same language. And that got the ball rolling. Now, as far as Gene's concerned, we're different in that regard. Gene could have left at any moment. He didn't need the research, but you got to remember, he's lived abroad before. And we have different personalities. He didn't need all this research. I did. He listened, but he didn't need it. When I said that I now can see a pathway for us to leave, it wasn't nothing else for him to hear. He could have packed the bag, left the house, left the land that we had. He could have left everything. I need to strategically put this together. And then in the midst of that, I found Serenity Healthcare. So I had started a conversation with the CEO of that company. I'm telling him what my needs are and my requirements, and just a lot of deep dive research went on. And now at the same time, we knew that we had kind of locked in. Now, we didn't tell anybody. We didn't tell any family. We didn't tell any friends that we were now entering into a path of moving abroad. And we had committed to each other that we wouldn't tell anybody, because we knew that a lot of people wouldn't understand, because to people in our lives, we had the dream life. We had the life that people, quote unquote, the American dream type of situation. So we knew they wouldn't understand leaving everything that we worked for. We didn't look at it like that. We both had worked very hard for our careers to obtain the things that we had, but it was just that. It was things. We had committed to not selling the house until we were approved to move. That was something I couldn't tolerate. Like, I needed to know we got approval to be able to do this. That scouting trip was really just to meet with some of the hospitals and to also determine where we wanted to land. I knew it wasn't going to be Lisbon, and I knew it wasn't going to be Porto. I lived in San Antonio. As much as I love cities, I'm originally from New York, but I don't want to live in a city like that every day. I knew coming here, it was for a softer life, more ease, more peace, more serenity, not boring. I don't want to live in the country, but I knew Lisbon and Porto every day was too much stimulation for me. I love going there, but we landed in Coimbra because it was a perfect fit for us. It has all of the things that you need. It has a lot of activity. People think it's just a college town, but it's not. It's a lot more than that here. But the one thing that they have that moved it to the top of the list is it's known as the city of doctors for a reason. They have extensive health care and specialists here, and it's the only city in Portugal that has enough doctors for its entire population. And one of the things that I needed to live in a city is I needed a major trauma hospital. For me to feel comfortable detaching from my dream team in the States, I needed to be within 15 minutes of a major respected trauma center. I needed that security blanket to feel like my transition of my healthcare, I would feel safe, moving forward. After that scouting trip, as soon as we got back, we dropped our package. The process started. And then we ramped up our efforts to continue selling off things. Then the clock started ticking.
Now that you're in Coimbra, and you said it's like the city of doctors, and talked a little bit about some of the things that you've enjoyed there. For someone who's never been to Coimbra or who's on the fence, right, thinking about retirement, but to your earlier comment about being tethered, one would think like you both had these big lives, sold your business, got rid of the house, and they may think, retirement is just going off into the sunset, or some people equate retirement with boredom. What is life like for you both today?
My day-to-day life is like anybody else's life. The only difference is I don't have to get up and be up at 6 a.m. getting ready for work, but I do get up for everyday life. So for me, Coimbra offers everything that you need to live your life. It provides us with a level of comfort. Every day we can wake up, and if I want to sit here in my living room and look out toward the river, because we live near the river, or look at a little TV, I can do that. If we want to get out and go visit other cities in Portugal, we can do that. We want to meet with friends, we can do that. It's not a boring life. Now, it's not drinks, it's not sangria and going out to dinner every night. That's not practical. That's not practical for anybody. That's a vacation. We didn't come here for a vacation. We came here to live our life. We wanted peace. People talk about serenity. Well, serenity is not sitting around woosawing every day. Serenity is taking a walk. We have a beautiful park, just walking the park, walking the city, just enjoying what's around us. That's, for me, that was one of the biggest things. In Lisbon, I grew up thinking that New York City was going to be my forever home. That's what I wanted for the longest time. For me, as I got older, I realized I didn't want to see buildings every day. I love big cities. I love visiting big cities. But when I'm at home, I love peace and quiet. And that's what we have. One of the things that I'm enjoying more so now is cooking, and not rush to cook, coming home from work, throwing something in the microwave, throwing something in the oven, throwing something real quick. You take your time, you cook. You go to the market here and buy everything fresh. You go to the butcher. Before coming here, the last time I had been to a butcher, I was a kid because when I was growing up, my dad used to go to the butcher. But now we go to the butcher and get our meats.
To me, it's like you have time to appreciate all the things we took for granted. All the stuff. I think about how, we're on autopilot every day, going to work, to the business and all this kind of stuff. And every day driving to work in the buildings all day, you took the weather for granted. You took the beautiful scenery that you would maybe pass on the way to work. Now we have time to appreciate, like today it's raining. I can appreciate looking and listening to the rain outside. I know that sounds corny, but I'm telling you, like, it's the little things. We live and have a view of a beautiful, huge river. And like he said, a beautiful green space by our place. I never knew how much I needed that. That is so peaceful and and relaxing and calming. But as much as I love being able to have the ability to have slow mornings, that's what I needed. Mornings was always a struggle for me because anybody that's listening that may have autoimmune, that has anything to do with arthritis or lupus, everyone listening knows that mornings are not our friend. Like literally, I have to prepare for my body to get moving and it can't be quick and in a hurry. And so now for me, slow mornings. I'm not booking no appointments early. I'm not making my body do what it don't want to do, which I did for most of my life. That was something that I committed to myself, that I'm not making my body do what it don't want to do. We may have a slow morning. Like he said, we love going to the market, picking fresh food, going to the butcher, but then we have our gym. I have some great trainers. A huge part of my journey is once I got here and realized the effects on my body, I committed to reversing the damage that had been done to my body in all the years that I was forcing myself to get up to go to work. The type of job I stood on my feet all day, every day, over medicated in the States. So the side effects of taking the level of medications you take with these type of chronic issues causes side effects. So once I got here and I saw how my body instantly started reacting, I committed to that. And so I've been on a journey of weight loss. I've been on a journey of lowering the inflammation and my cortisol levels. It is like a committed journey. And that's how I wake up every day. I'm seeing my trainers. I'm seeing my physiotherapists, which I have to say, they are on another level compared to the States. When you go to the gyms here, they're not just people that maybe took a certification. No, these guys are degreed in physical fitness and body systems and everything. So it's a whole different experience going to the gyms here. Also, my physiotherapist. I don't know, we have a huge community here. We have our neighborhood dinner club. I just celebrated my birthday, as you know, in another city in a historical UNESCO World Heritage Site monastery. That's where my birthday party was. Our schedule stays sometime a little too busy. It can be nonstop, but you can slow it down when you want to as well. It's just so many things, and then your own personal endeavors that you're doing. Since we've been here going into 3 years, Jean has finished 2 master's degrees since we've been here. And then on top of that, we traveling. Like earlier this year, we was in Iceland, we was in Norway, we was in Amsterdam. Like it can look however you want it to look. I just turned 60. We still like doing everything we've always done, but we absolutely love the freedom to choose what we're going to do and be intentional about our time. Now, that word intentional is used a lot, but I really mean that. Like what we do is so intentional. What I did in my business day to day, I had to do many things that I didn't necessarily want to do, and participate in things. And I was pulled on and over delivered, overserved, all the time. But now that commitment to ourselves that we really never had, it is seriously intentional. It is really, really intentional that we live the life that we want. And every day that looks different. You really don't have any limitations. Your limitations are in your own mind. Whatever you decide what kind of life you want, this is the time that you can design your life without any rules, whatever rules you place on yourself. The move is not a piece of cake. I mean, it's not unattainable, but I always say the pain needs to match the transformation. You are not going to get this level of life transformation without going through some uncomfortable situations that people could equate to pain or fear and anxiety. But the pain has to match the transformation. Because if this was easy, everybody'd be doing it. The people that's doing it has got to make some hard decisions about not the move, about your life, about your situation, your attachments. We had a lot of things attached to us that we had to unplug from. That wasn't pleasant. Some situations and relationships didn't serve us, but it sure served a lot of other people. But you got to make decisions about that. And that's more so what's stressful for people than the actual move. The actual process is paperwork. And so we made up our mind. We had been everything to everybody long enough. Now we want all of us for us. We have checked all the Good Samaritan boxes. We have truly been there for everybody, for everything. This life, the rest of what we have, whether it be 5 minutes, 5 months, or 5 years, we want it for us. Because we always go back to looking at losing all those people and how they lost all their dreams and everything that they had worked for, pensions, retirement. Other people got that stuff. They didn't even get to enjoy that. All of the delusion was wiped away for us. All we have is right now. We felt like Portugal was in the perfect vicinity to be able to travel for less and more often. It's so many places around us that take less than 2 hours to get to. You know, we flew to Morocco for a weekend. You flew to Amsterdam, less than 2 hours for a weekend. You know, so it's all those things that we love. So our day to day, it can be whatever it's going to be. But we know at a moment's notice, we can be Paris and Nice, Amsterdam, Morocco, all of these places I'm naming is less than a couple of hours to get to. And so that's, to me, what we live for, what excites us, you know, is to be able to see as much of the world and experience it in a way that we're not rushing through it and just taking it all in and meeting new people, developing new adult relationships that we can enjoy some of this with. You know, last year we went to Thailand with all new people that we met in Portugal. And that was amazing. And we look forward to more of that. We didn't see that coming at all. But we have some really rich relationships here in Portugal that I never really imagined. And what I love most about it is they're not transactional.
What I'm hearing now is you talked about, your lives in Coimbra and being intentional is abundance, really being able to tap in and have that sense of agency over what you want to pursue, be it additional education, slow mornings, adult relationships, extended travel. Those are the things that are what light you up. That's your currency of choice. Those other trappings of traditional success, that we've been rooted to or conditioned to believe, become less important because, like you said, you've had examples, you've had real examples, especially through loss of what life really means. As we start to close, as somebody who's listening to this, what advice would you give to help people stay aligned?
At some point, you have to say, if not now, when? A lot of people that are moving had a great life. Some people have had wonderful lives. But at some point, you have to sit there and say, oh, what I have now, it's not fulfilling anymore. Some people are doing it just because they're on autopilot. Again, it was easy to be on autopilot. That's the easy thing to do. The hard part is to break. The hard part is to push that button, take yourself off autopilot and go mad, and then, try to fly a straight line. You know what? We didn't enjoy our house until the pandemic, and we had already been in the house 12 years. When I used to go to work and working remotely, I sat in my office and I remember one day we were sitting there and I told Andrea, I said, man, this is a wonderful office. And I never used it before because I was always working. We were always doing things. Hell, we had a media room that I never used. So at some point, a lot of that stuff becomes just stuff. And just like she said, when we decided to move, see, the only thing I needed for her to say was, I'm ready. And I was ready. I had a backpack ready to go. And the hard part is taking the time to realize, okay, how do I want my life to look when we move? And I'm not saying Portugal is your place. There's a whole world of places you can live. And when you're out in this world, you find out that Black expats are everywhere. People are everywhere all over the world, just like my uncle did 40 years ago. It's just that he didn't have a platform. The people back then you heard moving overseas were actors, actresses, sports figures. My uncle came from little old McNair Station in Baytown, Texas. However, he got down to the border and he started his new life. And he lived a very enriching life. And one of the things that happened was one day my aunt came to me with a bunch of photo albums. And we sat down and she showed me where he had been, things he had done. He did a lot of things that I never knew about, as far as piano, theater, doing the education. He loved life. He loved life. My aunt can see that in me. And sometimes, like I said, it used to make her sad a little bit when she saw me. But, I understand. I understand now better than I ever have. But during our lifetime together, I almost lost her 4 times because of what she has to deal with on a daily basis. So it got to the point was, again, if not now, when? So we decided now is the when.
And as much as that sounds like, oh, everything just rolled out and it was an easy process, it wasn't. I did the research. Even though we put the steps together and knew what to do and that we were going to sell and do all the things, I still, not Jean, me, had waves of fear and hesitation. It would come in waves. Like one day I would be good and I'm going through room by room, offloading, knowing what we take into Goodwill and this, that, and the other. And then I would just get this wave of fear and then start questioning, are you sure we should be doing it? That's that childhood trauma. That's that home insecurity showing up from when I was a child. I told you I was moved around and plucked from here to there. That's that trauma that's surfacing. It had nothing to do with that moment. It's just, I've worked hard for all this, and it's that scarcity and just, should we be selling the other land? And, all these things start bubbling up. So I would say to people, you got to be ready to get honest with yourself. And if it's a couple, you got to talk about it, work together. Jean had to hold my back up many a times that I felt like I was going to cave, like I really did. As much as I knew I wanted this adventure, this experience, but my childhood trauma is probably it's different and I don't know, more severe, whatever. I always said he had the white picket fence and the warm cookies on the table when he came home from school. And, his parents bought him a car in high school. I didn't have none of that. So my fears came in different waves. And I had to address that, and understand that we got this. You just have to chop it down. You can't let it make you settle for what's comfortable. You have to be willing to get uncomfortable. You can't expect for this process to be comfortable. It took us 55 years to build that comfort. This supposed to happen in 6 months, 12 months, even 2 years? No, that is not realistic. But look at what's on the other side of that. That joy, that whatever you want to call it, is on the other side of that. You got to push through that. What I say, the pain's got to match the transformation. It took us 55 years to build this comfort, this so-called dream life. But we done it, and it's done. I want something different. I want to see the rest of the world. I want to experience something I've never experienced. I want a life unrecognizable. That's what I want. I've worked hard for everything we have. Now I want to sit back and just create. And it's going to look different for everybody, but you got to start. You can't even worry about that until you start. And in the process of that, we realize by being in community, by being in circles of people that's talking the talk that is in the same vein as you, we realized we could live lots of places. We picked up residency in Mexico just because we found out we could. Not because we was prepared to move to Mexico, because we had the option to do that. It may stack another 2 or 3. It just depends. But when you create that space to dream again and to execute on those things, it changes your life. So my main thing is you got to talk and you got to make the decision and you got to put some urgency with it. And really, I mean, with what's happening in the world today, I don't know how everybody don't have urgency. I really don't. Like, I don't know who needs to be convinced that if you plan on living your life, your best life, today would be the best day to do that, because we are not promised tomorrow. And so that would be my 2 cents about, to other couples or to whoever's listening, make the decision.
Look at YouTube. Look what other people say about a bunch of different places. Don't look at what we're talking about today and say, oh, we can do that.
Everybody probably thought we was crazy, but that's why we didn't bring him into the conversation, because I don't really need to hear that. It wasn't going to change our minds. Now a lot of those same people are like, oh man, y'all was ahead of the curve, man. It's horrible over here. I might need to reach out to you to get some information. No, we hear and get text messages all the time. But when we did it, I'm sure people was looking at us sideways. And that's okay. Because again, think about Uncle Lester. How you think people was looking at him? For us, it's worked out pretty dang well. No regrets. And we just look forward to more of what we're enjoying.
I'm so grateful that on this journey that the universe allowed our lives to intersect. And I'm so delighted and grateful to you both for not only the friendship, but for you sharing your remarkable journey on the podcast. With that, I want to thank you again for being guests on the Blaxit Global Podcast. I wish you more abundance, more joy, more freedom, good health.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure. And, like I said, it's been a pleasure knowing you and meeting so many other people here in this country. And, our paths may not have crossed if it wasn't for Bailey. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Blaxit Global Podcast. For more information on today's episode, be sure to visit our website at blaxitglobal.com. It's not only possible to live out your dreams unbothered and in full color, it is your birthright. This episode of the Blaxit Global Podcast is sponsored by Blaxit Global Passport. At some point, the question stops being, can I move abroad? And becomes, what's possible for my life? Passport is where Black women from around the world come together to explore new possibilities, navigate life abroad, and create lives that feel bigger than the ones they were told to settle for. Because the goal was never just to move. The goal is to expand what feels possible. Visit blaxitglobal.com and click community to begin your next chapter.